Welcome, everybody. It's nice that we're here again together to discuss about, this is the second session actually, that we will discuss together about the user-centered design and how this can facilitate the whole process of media, let's say, applications development, design and development. So last time in this, we started discussing a bit the user-centered design process or methodology that we would follow for creating such, let's say, designs and prototypes. So, and what we discussed mostly is around the exploration phase. Okay, so we had the chance to make the point first why user-centered design is so important in the AI age, given the current, let's say, complexity, uncertainty, data, AI, different dimensions that they come to influence, let's say, the more traditional practices of journalistic practices. And what we pretty much agreed on is that our end user, our persona, the angle that will interact with specific application, more or less is found in the cross borders of the business side of things, the context, which relates directly to the content of journalism, no matter what the action might be, if it is information extraction, if it's article creation, if it's dissemination, etc. Then on the other hand, we have artificial intelligence that strongly has also been positioned with the various methods, paradigms, opportunities that we have into, let's say, the journalistic landscape. And on the other hand, we have the user experience. Okay, we have this part that needs to take care that whatever we create, it will be delivered in the more effective, more efficient way. It will be usable and will be able to create new experiences of how content is being consumed and how our end users interact with it. So we gave a couple of examples of this, what this might mean around. So for creating, for example, applications that could consider feedback directly in real time into the development of article generation for the journalist persona. Why does it move? One moment. Here we are. Also we defined, therefore, since there is this need to keep the human in the loop, to keep the end user in the loop for the creation of such for such design, for such let's say applications, we suggested a method of how we can get there, and this paradigm, rather than the method, it's around the human-centered design-led development process, that it's being composed from distinctive phases, which are composed from the exploration, the discovery, the design, the delivery, and the continuous monitoring of the data, let's say, extracted, all the specific applications that they run in the field for collecting the feedback and accordingly to fuse back to the previous phases their insights for improvements of the applications.
Yes, I can say something here that all this methodology has to do with the creation and development or the design of new products. So as journalist, you can have the position of designer and try to see a business solution in your organization, try to create new products in order to understand what this methodology means to you.
Yes, I mean, in a nutshell, what we were saying is that, so we were trying to understand a bit earlier to define the problem space and the solution space. Okay, so we tried to, in order to create such innovations as Kostas mentioned, we need to understand what is the problem that we want to solve. And in order to understand the problem, we need to break it down and to bring it in the granularity that would be able to be tackled with specific, let's say, as a specific solution. And the starting point there is to understand what are the opportunities, the innovation opportunities that we might have in our organization, to what extent those opportunities are aligned with the generic, let's say, overall strategy of our organization, what are business cases that might be incorporated, and how can we define them in order to understand what are the users that they will, let's say, will be affected, and from then on to be able to understand their user journeys towards specific goals. Okay, so and this is what the very first problem space definition is what we cover also today. We started with the exploration of the more business side of things, and today we will deep dive onto the discover phase. And next time, in the next session, we will discuss a bit about how these insights that we collect from the research, from the exploration, the discover phase, we can fuse them into the design phase in order to be able to create, to generate prototypes for our solution. So for this course, this is going to be the end of this journey together. So the teams would be expected to create low fidelity or high fidelity or wireframes, whatever it better works for them, of prototypes and around an innovation solution that they would like to have and they have defined, let's say, earlier in the process. So what we need to emphasize is that what we try to emphasize also in this, and what we will keep saying, is that developing such innovations following the proposed methodology, it is a collaborative work. Okay, it's a team effort. It's not the effort of a single role in your organization, your media organization, but rather it requires the skill set, the expertise, the angle, the perspective of different roles around this proposed, let's say, solution. This can be, let's say, from the director, from the editor, the journalist, the data analyst, the artificial intelligence expert, the user researcher, the user experience designer. So all these people, they have a different perspective of how an innovation could look like, and they're, let's say, and if they work together, they try to bring the best out of it. Okay, so this is not just a work of a journalist, all right, to be able to understand the problem, to define the solution, to design the solution, or to give it later on just as specifications to design it, to develop the solution, but rather we need to incorporate from the very beginning, from day one, all the involved roles, especially now that with the AI incorporation and its own, let's say, a standalone methodology and a way of developing the various models for specific AI tools to be effective needs to be considered very early during the requirement collection analysis phases. So for the exploration phase, we mostly emphasized what would be such a solution that would bring out the business value for organization currently. What would be, let's say, specific challenges that could be tackled in order to improve specific, let's say, challenges that we are facing, either in the process of the journalistic practices or innovations that would create new experiences for our audience. If not for us as journalists, let's say, or editors, that we are internal in the media organization, let's say for the external audience that interact with our media sort of application. So therefore, we discussed a lot about how can we define a business value and a success, and what are the challenges there, and we tried to give a bit of an overview of what is a product charter, where the it's a document where we agree what would be, let's say, the requirements, and this solution would be about. So this is the document, and I will show you again an example that will show what are the various specifics, the details that needs to be addressed in order to have the sign off and start the project. Okay. And for what I need to remind also is that just for you to make easier the transition and the parallel of the theory that we are discussing with you, we're bringing in a real-life example of the IQ journalism example, an application that have we created, let's say, a couple of years ago under the lead of Katerina. And her PhD, and the main one of the main, let's say, concerns or objectives of these applications is to be able to understand what would be, how can we predict the perceived engagement and of articles before we even produce them or let them fly. Okay, so how can I have a tool that they can use, an artificial intelligence module that could guide me throughout the writing process, depending on the audience that I want to address the specific article that I want, or more, let's say, contextual constraints that I want to have. So we will use this project for you as, let's say, to see as a real life example of the various templates and the various methods that we will discuss. And of course, you can have, if I'm not mistaken, Katerina, we can also share later on this solution with our colleagues in order to have an end-to-end understanding from day one of the business opportunities identification until the prototype, how the story flows. So a project charter, it looks like this. I mean, I am pretty much sure that most of you might have already had some experience with it. So it has some general project information around the project, what would be the deliverables, what would be the risks, what would be the budget, the roles that would be involved for the implementation of this project, what are expectations for each role. And so to give a very good idea before we get starting with the work. And in order to be able to create this project charter, we said that our information needs to be aligned with the general strategy of the organization. And we gave here, again, a real life example. So the example under the umbrella of IQ journalism, which I will again repeat. So, for example, if we would have this success path that would lead us in the end to the design, what we have identified, or what would be a driver for us for creating our innovation would be the lack of clear guidelines and tools, or the need to optimize journalistic quality and social media engagement. And for that, breaking down this, let's say, high-level statement as an overarching aim to strategic goal objectives and initiatives that we would like to have, what we would need to do, therefore, was to increase the engagement and the audience retention. So this is what we are aiming at. For that, our objective is to boost social media engagement and metrics like shares, etc. And we could just use practices like machine learning models for quality prediction. As you can understand, this details a bit more of this high-level aim, but it's not yet at the detail that we would need it in order to design our solution. And that's why we go further to the process to understand, first of all, if this strategic priority is important, and in order to understand that, we need to create to align it with specific risks, internal barriers that might be. What would be the solution that would address this problem, etc. And in our case, this would be a writing assistant. And once this happened, we needed to define what this will be, in other words. Okay, so we need to bring it up to definition level. So, and the definition statement here with this template would be that our business case is around the communication and media studies department. where needs an intelligent advisor to predict and perceive quality of green news articles for journalists and editors, and improve the quality and engagement of online news articles. You see, therefore, that in order to reach this objective, we need to be able to create such a solution. This solution we will detail a bit more, so to understand which are the roles that are involved, what are exactly the business benefits, what are the challenges, what are the AI modules that needs to be incorporated. And once we agree to that, we are moving further on to planning. Okay, so we have what was as a specification at the very beginning. It needs to put in relation to time. And what we proposed, as I'm sure that every one of you uses, is a Gantt chart where we break down the whole work in the timeline that we have. Might be 12 months, 16 months, 18 months, 6 months, whatever the time plan we have in the budget. You break it down into tangible tasks, manageable tasks, not tangible, but manageable tasks that you would like to see how they look like in terms of time and how they depend to each other. Okay, so which one needs to finish in order for another one to start, what gets input from where, etc. Okay, so and then we had a long coffee break of 2 weeks from Nice to back home. And then once we created this business understanding, we wanted to start fresh now to discuss about the discover phase. Okay, so we want to start going deeper, let's say, towards the solution that we want to design. Okay, so we can start then with the discover. So far as you understood, we moved a bit parallel. All right, so always in relation to the business scope and organization. What we want now is to take the solution, the business case definition that we have for the solution that we want to create, and try to understand what that means. Okay, so what are the requirements around this solution, always in relation to our customers and our end users. So in this discover phase, which is also called user research phase, you might have heard it, we move a bit vertical and we try to understand what are specific tasks that the user does, and for which we would need to provide the solution upon. Okay, so we need to understand what are the needs, what are the pain points of the users, what is the, how can we ensure that we will have a higher quality delivered through the experience that this specific innovation would deliver. And user research is one of the methods that we apply early enough in order to extract these truths and with our targeted, let's say, user group. When you say user group or when you say user, we are mostly we are referring not to any stakeholder that will interact with application, but to the stakeholder that this application or this innovation is aiming at. Okay, so this is the guy or that would work with a specific or would interact mostly during the day, during the days of the week with the specific use cases that we would define in order to achieve, let's say, to accomplish a specific goal. Okay. So we want, therefore, to understand what the users do. All right. So what do they need, what they think, and what they want. All right. And ideally, what they would wish to have. All right. So when we're talking about innovations, what we're trying always to understand during this phase is we try to have an out-of-the-box thinking, even to be able to brainstorm and come up with features, functionalities, interaction flows that would make, let's say, the business life or the interaction life of our end users easier. And in order to approach this challenge of this information gathering, extraction, analysis later on, before we interpret it into designs, we would need again to follow a user research process. And this process would entail the collection of data, all right? So we need to go out, we need to go on the spot to understand, as we said, what the users do in their daily life. We would need to collect, therefore, the information, the data, and then we would need to come back to understand them. We would need to analyze, to interpret them, to understand the why specific, let's say, actions or specific frustration points exist, in order for us at a later stage to define them, in order for us to be able to define them as interactions, that we would be able to design them at a later stage. Okay, so for the as a user, many times the user, we call him or her, we call him a persona. Okay, a persona, it is an archetype of our users. It's a fictitious representation of a user. Okay. So let's say that you have an audience, let's say of an application that you want to be addressing a specific interaction, or let's say news consumption from Generation Z sort of user group. Okay, so we are now at a stage where you would need to create a persona or two or three, depending of the variations that there might be, around for defining the Generation Z user. Okay, so what this would be. So after the investigation you would do, you would come back and you would say that that there are three different types of personas for Generation Z that I would need to consider for as an angle for my solution. And this is an example of how a persona look like. Okay, so it has again, under the acute journalism example, it has, let's say, some specific clauses, some specific parts that needs to be completed. There are many various different persona templates that you can use. This is one representative one. So you can, first of all, give it a name. So to create some empathy, let's say, with this representative user, this fictitious user that we want to design for. What is the age or the age group that this user might belong? Some background information. What is the network that usually the specific persona interacts with? Is it only the peers? Is it some other external collaborators that they might have in order to be able to consume, in that case, for example, news, right? So, or to create understanding around news? Are there any communities of practice that they exchange, for example? What kind of types of users are in there? So this is, let's say, some questions that you would try to understand. How, let's say, a specific environment might look like, to create some contextual understanding of the space that a specific persona interacts with your innovation. Then what is, yes, the role or the roles might be more than one. This is an easy case, more or less, or try to make it easy, actually. What is the goal of this persona? The tasks that there might be, how frequently these tasks are taking place, what motivates them, what frustrates them, right? So this is you get a very good, a holistic, let's say, understanding for whom you actually design for. And this is extremely important. This is super important. We cannot design an innovation if we do not know the angle that we are aiming at. We don't know the angle that we see in this application. So this persona needs to be very clear for you. And from then on, of course, you need to prioritize for which task you would like to go ahead in your first, for example, version. Because always time, it is an issue, budget is an issue, effort is an issue, capacity of the resources, it's an issue. I'm trying to bring in the business perspective of it now to see how it blends into, let's say, the research plan. So for the solution of creating this intelligent editor for our journalist, for the IQ journal, for example, the tasks that we gave priority was that it was the researching and writing articles on current events. That was the task that we wanted to tackle with the solution for Maria. What motivates Maria for that task was recognition for well-researched and impactful stories and opportunities for professional growth and skill development. And on the other hand, frustration points or pain points you might hear them is, for example, that she works always under tight schedule. Okay, so the time constraints is always an issue, and there are always complicated tools or dispersed, let's say, tools or data sources that she would need to integrate specific truths for developing, let's say, the piece of work that she wants to create. All right, good. So let's see now how can we create this persona. All right, so let's see how can we, because a persona at the end of the day, it's a deliverable, right? It's an artifact that we have it ready with some information in, but the question is, how do I collect this information? How do I understand the frustration points? How do I understand the needs or the wishes, or what is, for example, the background of the contextual information of a specific user that I want to design for. In order to do that, I would need to investigate, to explore. Let's say we are still in the problem space. I would like to explore the space of the specific user groups. Okay, so there are many ways that we can do that. Today, and for the scope of this course, we will concentrate mostly on interviews. Okay, so interviews, it is one way that we can apply early enough with end users on one-to-one basis, with focus groups, remotely, on site, in order to extract the information that we want. So imagine that this is you, okay, so a team that coming from the media organization X, and you would like to go ahead and to investigate around the innovation of your solution. Okay, so you need to understand what are the users that they will use this solution, and so you prepare, let's say, some material, and you follow a process in order to do that. And the very first step, what you need to do once you are in the room before you go out in the field, is you try to define the objectives. Okay, what are the research objectives that you want to tackle this time around? You need to understand which are the end users that you want. Okay, and how much time you want to allocate for it. And again, to bring things in perspective, imagine that for that you have to make, you have a business plan. You have an initial business plan, all right? So as you remember from the exploration phase. Within this business plan, you need to have 1 or 2 or 3 tasks that would be dedicated to the activities that you want to do now. So if you would have 6 months, the question for you is how much time would allocate in order to collect the information that you want. Okay, so there's no right and wrong. Okay, I'm just raising now the questions just to trigger a bit some thinking, because how long you will invest in each task, it's always relative. And it depends from the availability of the users. It depends on the availability of internal resources, when you're going to have the necessary material in place in order to investigate, etc. Okay, so therefore you need to do an initial assessment, a research assessment, before you go ahead with. So usually, depending of the method that we will apply, we might prioritize and the number of the participants that we could have on board. So if it would be focus groups, for example, that the way that you will design your research would allow interaction between the various end users during the execution of specific tasks for collecting information, I mean. And you could have, let's say, 5 groups of 5 sort of end users, okay? So you could have 20 end users on board. If it would be, let's say, more formative or exploratory interview-based activities, in that case, it's a bit more difficult to and more time-consuming to design for these sessions. So it means that if you would manage to have, let's say, 9 to 12 end users on board, that would be a very good starting point. And why 9 to? So imagine those are sessions where your team would have to visit the end user in the place of working or interacting, let's call it like that. And you would spend 60 or 90 minutes with them to try and extract the information that you want. So if you multiply 9 to 12 end users, even if you would have them, let's say, every day, this definitely would last 1 week and a half, okay? Because you cannot have it all in one day, right? So this is very exhausting, let's say, right? And usually it doesn't work to have more than 2 or 3 user interviews at the same day. So 9 to 12 researchers have shown that during the analysis, it seems that some facts start repeating itself. Okay, so if we're talking now for the same user, all right, so if we're talking for an user in Generation Z, that at the age of 18, that they are from a specific area, for example, in Germany, which means that they're going to the same last class of school. It means that they might have been quite close to the same societal level. They have the same background, similar, not same, similar background. So I would expect, if I would have, let's say, a user group of 9, 8, 10, somewhere there, I would expect that the answers I will get, it would be, let's say, replicated. If not, because your user group is particular and you might take more angles of the data that you want, then, of course, you could increase your sample. Okay. So, emphasizing on the interviews, choosing the method, okay, of course, we need to set up the material, we need to set up the environment of how this will be conducted and when. We have, I will pass it, yeah, that a bit quickly. I mean, so we have 2 types of interviews. It's the more exploratory and more formative, let's say, a paradigm of applying interviews. The exploratory focuses mostly on, it's very early that is taking place, and it focuses on motivations and behaviors of users around the expected, let's say, product. We try to understand their context. We try to understand who are the people, as I said, that they work with. We try to generate, we try to have primary research. So we are on one-to-one basis, on a discussion level. We have a structure for us to guide us through the process and collect the information we want. And we can also follow up if we want with more standardized questionnaires or surveys in order to collect data upon. So, for example, if I want to have more hard data on how many hours per day you're using a mobile phone, all right? So, or which are the most common applications that social media applications you're interacting with, or which are the most common sources of information that you interact with to get the first touch with the world, for example. So all these things can be extracted also via a survey. So the positive thing about exploration is that I can understand the why. Okay, so the why, it is a big big sort of truth that I can extract. That's why during exploration, I always try to understand the motive and what triggers specific actions, thoughts, feelings around, let's say, the daily tasks or a possible interaction that the end users might have with a given solution. The more formative part could also take place a bit later in time when you also have a very first concept of what you want to create. So this jumpstart, let's say, as we call it, where the team has, let's say, reinvents an application or an innovation, okay? And there are some thoughts, even from prior research, and then you wanna move a bit faster, so you bring some concepts, low fidelity concepts up, and then you have some concept testing with your end users, with Mozilla testing or whatsoever, where you can where Gorilla testing or whatever, where you can extract information on specific features that you want to promote, innovation, interactions that you want to bring forward, experience that you might have thought if they're true, if they're working or not, if they're solving specific problems, etc. So usually the format it moves from structured to unstructured. So unstructured is the more open-ended questions, simply put. More exploratory open-ended questions. The structure are the more questions that I expect, let's say, specific answers. So the latter, it's easier to analyze than the former. We will see later on a couple of angles for the analysis. But what is advisable always is to have a mixture of methods and application methods of this. Of how you put your interviews into operation. So this is again a template, an example of how a guide, an interview guide, could look like. You see that we start with the background questions that might be generic questions about the interviewer. And from then on, I'm trying and I'm putting inject, let's say, questions that might relate to the interview that I have at hand. So, for example, I do care of what is the software that the users use for, let's say, their daily interactions. Okay, so this is something that I could always enhance with. Then, once I have the background information, what I need to understand is, as we said, what are the tasks of the user? Okay, so there I'm starting a discussion of what would be, let's say, daily activities that might require the use of the technology or not. Okay, technology is not here the main concern for us. What we're trying to understand is a more holistic, let's say, to get a more holistic view of for our specific end users, and the various touch points that they have in order to accomplish specific jobs that they want. Okay, so this is what we do. Then another part might go deeper on the process per se, trying to squeeze out information like what triggers, let's say, specific task initiation, or if there are tasks that they are recurring, let's say, happen every Monday morning, or tasks that might relate to other tasks. Okay, so one colleague of mine needs to finish something in order for me to start something else, etc. So all this is specific information that I usually brainstorm with my team before I go to the interview. Okay, so what I want to find out, and which usually relate to the innovation that I want to create. And we give you also here a cheat sheet as questions that might guide you through this process, with points that might relate to the activity, to the information flow, to the decision making throughout the process of interaction, communication, etc. Okay. So I have assessed my situation. I have my research objectives. I created my material. The very next thing is I need to recruit my users, right? I'm sure that you as media organizations have your own channels of how you reach out to your audience, even directly or through third parties. Just as a note here, what we wanted, again, as a hint to advise is try to create an overall scheduling of your sessions, especially if your sessions are composed from 20 or 25 end users, then you need to be able to create an understanding of where the data that you collect coming from, and will help you later on from the analysis. Number one. And number two, you need to be able to understand, to make sure that all the colleagues from your organization are available during the execution of the interviews. Okay, so given your busy plans and schedules, it's not always the case that the team would be available when it should be available. Therefore, this schedule helps organize things, or for finding other colleagues that might be able to help with specific activities during the execution of the interviews. Okay, and I will explain a bit later on what those roles might be during execution. So for the recruitment, as I said, there are third-party channels. You might have your own channels, but from then on, there are online channels that you can register, you can subscribe, and you can use. One is the Amazon check. I mean, Amazon, of course. So this is something that it's open and you can use it. Is the respondent IO tool, where what you do, you pretty much describe. It's a platform that is used as a liaison between you and the end users. So there are specific end users that are registered to the platform because they want to participate on user research studies. Okay, either now for interviews or later on for usability tests, as we will see next time. So they are registered to the platform. You are registered to the platform. You upload a profile at the very beginning. Okay, so what it is, the end user that you expect, the end user that you would like to have. And from then on, those respondent takes care of this profile to match expected, let's say, end users that you will revise. And if there's some that fits to you, then you can invite them and you can schedule the sessions. Okay, so this is so UserZoom is another also platform that you can use for recruitment and execution of remote interviews, or Optimal or Validately. All these are around this. They have the same capabilities. Usually, UserZoom that I mentioned, it helps you also execute the remotely the interviews. Remote execution of interviews, it's something that has its benefits, as always, yeah, but it has its drawbacks. Okay, so of course you don't need travel expenses. They might set up a bit faster. You might reach out to more geographic time zones for end users. You might have a more dispersed, let's say, diversified user group. Focus groups, you might have multiple users joining, easier to a space that you will indicate for extracting the interviews, etc. Of course, you're losing a very important information, and this information is how things look like on the field. Okay, so how busy, how noisy, how clean, dirty, how it is the environment that the end user interacts every day, or you would expect that to interact daily with your innovation, right? So, and this is something that it gives us clues that usually end users forget or miss to share, especially if it's something that they're very accustomed to. They usually tend to ignore. Okay, so and this is details and cues that we can extract if we are there and we observe the end user during the daily business life. So, and once we recruit and we have our sessions ready, so it is advisable, as I said, to be 60 to 90 minutes. Leave half an hour break in between, but make sure that you have all colleagues on board. And by saying all colleagues, either if it's remote or if it's on-site, okay, we are referring to roles that reflect a moderator, of course, is the end user, 1 to 2 note takers, and 1 observer, a business stakeholder. All right. So, for example, the observer, the moderator is the person that will guide the whole process. Will monitor the whole discussion and will use the guide that we saw earlier to navigate the various questions around the information and the data that you want to collect. Is the one that it will set the pace to the discussion and to the interview, and would make sure that the end user will feel comfortable with all this, of course, and will make all the legal statements at the very beginning and the confidentiality statements that needs to be done, and will make sure that it will keep the time as it has been promised to. The note takers are the ones that they are the silent observers, we can also call them, where they take notes. Okay, so by say take notes, we mean about everything. So they don't try to structure notes, they try to capture as much as they can. This is the rule here. Not to make beautiful notes, but rather to collect all these seeds of information that you can synthesize later on, right? So these notes can be captured either on the paper or it can be captured on the laptop, wherever someone feels more comfortable with. And a note taker always observes as well. Okay, so he might also take notes of own observations, but it's good if there's a distinction between own observation and then user observations or sayings. Okay, so don't try to interpret. This is something that we tend to do, let's say, most of the time subconsciously, but here we avoid interpreting. Okay, we want to just capture things as they are. Okay, and I know that now there are AI tools that might do that, but the quality, it's not, I mean, and they have a very, they might capture sufficient, let's say, volume of notes, but the quality in terms of terminology or specifics that we want to have in relation to our innovation might not be in place. Okay, so it's good to use it auxiliary, let's say, but I wouldn't, until now at least, recommend it to assign it to an AI agent for this action. And then you have it is important always to at this point, I have to mention that it's always important that you have a dry run earlier, okay, before you go on the field. And the reason is because you need to be able to sync the moderator with a note taker, right? So your note taker needs to know at which point on the interview guide the moderator is each time. So here, the moderator tries, while moderates, to give hints with keywords, let's say, that might relate to specific questions, in order for the note taker to be able to follow up, right? So it tries not to confuse a bit the flow of the interview guide. Of course, the end user might be very talkative and might jump here and there. So, but this is the job of the moderator to bring back without losing or compromising information. Okay, so this is also part of the experience. So the observer, on the other hand, might act as a note taker, but it's not necessary. Okay, so it might be high level, let's say, stakeholder that might be there and might be able to answer questions from the business side of things. Okay, so that the note taker or the moderator might not know, right? So because the end user might ask business questions about the innovation solution that comes up, And there, it's a matter of confidentiality, what can be shared or not. And usually business stakeholders are the ones that they know best how this can be communicated in order not to discourage the end user, to give the opportunity and the thrill, let's say, because end users, when they participate, they expect a change in their life. Okay, so this is something that you should know, right? So when you have an end user on board and shares and open up their heart to you, expects that they will see a change. So usually they engage a lot and they have expectations. And the question is, how do we mediate, all right, or navigate in these expectations, okay? Because the solution might be ready, for example, in 2 years and not in 6 months as someone would expect, for example. Okay. Yes, and then you execute, and then you're back, okay? So, and you want to analyze the data. So imagine that you have analyzed data, you have collected data from 9 to 12 to 20 users, unstructured data, notes, qualitative data, and quantitative data, and you want to bring them together. One way to do that is to, first of all, you need to structure them, right, to the extent that you can. So to clean them. So as a note taker, especially when you're back, you need to clean your data and to make it readable to everyone, let's say. And then you need to be able to combine them in order to extract the insights that you want. And usually one approach that we follow for qualitative data is the theming analysis, as we call, where simply put, we have our data, we try to create an initial grouping, semantic grouping, okay, what the data reveal. And from then on, if we want to go deeper, we apply some codes to see the type of its datum. Okay, so for example, that I might have, let's say, challenges, okay, and I have in there 3 codes that I say which challenges are severe or which challenges, let's say, are not that frequent, okay. And just to, again, on a high level, what we do, we can do that even on a single document that we have. So usually try to digitize our notes. Okay, so if we digitize our notes, then we try to consolidate our data in one space, in one sort of document. And in there, we try to highlight which data, for example, are frustration points, or which data are wishes, or which are needs, or which are tasks, etc. And then once we do that, we try to to synthesize them and create one view across the note takers, across the end users, okay, in order to have data for the one persona that I want. Okay, so that's why we said, and persona, you can imagine it as an aggregated version of the end users that I want to tackle. Then I sort my themes, okay, and then I prioritize them before I go ahead with the next step, which would be the extraction of the various artifacts. Okay, so there are also tools like user Mural or Figma that you can use as a collaboration space, digital collaboration space, where you can use post-its, following the design thinking method, for example, and you can extract the various information bytes and you can stick them on the wall, and the digital wall, or even design, you can apply design thinking in a room, and then you can synthesize and you can create the grouping and the themes and the clusters as you want them, being back or in your organization with your team. So what we try to extract, as I mentioned, is so the good thing about what follows after interview is to create some artifacts. One artifact that you saw at the very beginning is the persona. So from all this process that I followed, I should be able to extract specific codes or themes, depending on the granularity that I analyze, of points that are responsibilities, are needs, are frustration points. or might be able to extract the tasks that I need to prioritize. And one way to prioritize your tasks is to see them in terms of frequency, how often someone executes a task, and relevance, okay, how important it is to them. And from then on, of course, the higher frequent and the higher important are the ones that you can go ahead with to implement them at a later stage. And then we need to validate ideally, all right? So here is a number of templates of what you can use as artifacts once you have this interview information and data, and what is good afterwards, maybe not with all the end users, but with a selection of end users to follow up with them and try to validate the artifact that you created based on the consolidated version of all the end users, right? So the information you collected across the end users. And one artifact that we will also use in this class, and it's very important, I mean, we saw that we have the persona, but from then on, we need to have a user journey. We need to have these steps, actions that the end user takes throughout this persona takes throughout the daily life in order to understand what are the touch points that the user has, motivation points or challenges. Again, there are many ways and templates for someone to do that. This is one template, so that you start you create a flow from left to right. On top, you have the mindset. Okay, so for example, what are the feelings? Okay, so what are the expectations of this persona that has for the specific flow? Then you have the actions that it takes for accomplishing a specific, let's say, job, and what is the touch points? I mean, what are systems, technology, tools, post-its even, okay? What is the medium that the user uses in order to accomplish the specific actions? So usually this goes vertical, and for the sake of time and for our success, the golden thread that we follow for IQ journalism, to create, as we said earlier, as a reminder, the intelligent advisor editor for news, for the article creation. The action here is that Maria writes the article focusing on the narrative elements. Okay, so she's anxious about meeting the deadlines while ensuring accuracy. So you directly get the feeling around it. Okay, and then what the touch point for her would be the software, writing software, let's say, or editors that she could use to do the job. Okay. Here, feel free to list any kind of actions that you have that usually they might relate to each other in terms of time. Okay, so we list here for the sake of the example only 3, but this can be 10, for example, or 12. And of course, there for your solution, you need to prioritize. But you see that we now move vertically. Now we try to prioritize what is the one task that I want to go ahead with, and to offer. To innovate for it. And once I do that, I'm trying to understand what is the need or the feature for the specific editor, for example, that Maria wanted. And this is the last point that we will discuss today. For creating user stories, so one touch point might have many user stories that can be generated from different angles. There is a template for it, and the structure is that as A, I would like to, so that I can. Okay, so here I'm brainstorming for this solution, for this specific action that I want, and the specific mindset that I have, what would be some features, some needs, some wishes that I would have for this, and I would like this solution, this prototype, to offer for me. And here it is an example. As a journalist, for this, again, intelligent editor, I would like to receive real-time editing recommendations on various aspects, including language, quality, subjectivity level, emotionality, entertainment, and social media engagement, so that I can improve the quality of my work and engage readers more effectively. So you see now, if you recall now the business case that we defined earlier, why do I need this editor? And now the level of granularity that I have here, I come to a level to define what are the features that I would like to have in, like subjectivity, emotionality, for example. So all these are features, are factors, if you don't want to use it, factors that somehow this tool needs to relate to and needs to create a prediction around it in order to facilitate the creative process of Maria. And of course, I give the minimum contextual information that I want. Why do I want this? Okay. As I said, for a specific activity flow in the user journey, you might have more than one user stories, but because the user story, it's at the detail now that it can generate as a one step is left in order to generate the prototype, you need again to prioritize. So feel free at the very beginning to brainstorm, but from then on, you need to choose one user story or two relevant if you want to go ahead with your solution.